The phone lit the dark like a blade as Emma stared at Daniel's name, and the preview whispered, "We need to talk." Rain pressed against the window, and Emma said, "Please not like this." The clock read 3:07 a.m., and the apartment smelled of cold tea and dust. A loading bubble pulsed, then stopped, as if mercy could come from a pause. Emma wiped the screen and saw the last photo they sent months ago. Daniel had promised soon, and she had folded her life around that word. The kettle clicked off in the silence, and Emma said, "Say it quickly, or take it back." A car hissed by outside, dragging a ribbon of light along the ceiling. Her thumb hovered over call, then retreated like a tide. Maya's messages glowed unread, caution trapped in warm words. Emma opened the thread and typed, "Are you okay?" then erased it until only breath remained. The typing bubble returned, then vanished, and her chest tightened like a fist. Emma said, "If you loved me, you would not make me read it alone." The room waited with her, and the rain would not stop. Dawn thinned the sky while Emma stared at the unsent message, blinking like a weak star. She rehearsed calm replies and swallowed the hurt until it scratched her throat. Emma said, "Write nothing you will have to forgive." The city hummed awake, and the rain softened to a hush, as if the world pitied her. She remembered Daniel's promise to visit by spring, a vow pressed between exams and rent. Emma tucked the photo into a drawer like it could not bruise her eyes anymore. Maya's name flashed again, and Emma said later, "Because shame can hide behind chores." She folded the blanket with measured care and lined up the mugs in even rows. Her hands stilled when the phone buzzed and then stopped. Emma said, "If silence is an answer, say it clearly." She placed the phone face down and felt the table shiver. Somewhere a door closed, and the sound felt final. The bus groaned toward the university, and Emma watched water bead along the window seam. She typed, "Are you okay?" then deleted it again, trimming hope to the bone. A couple laughed 2 rows ahead, and the sound pricked her skin. Emma said, "He is busy, not cruel," and tried to believe it. A campus banner slapped its pole in a wet wind, reminding her of the welcome Daniel once promised. She pictured the airport greeting, the run, the first breath close enough to share. The fantasy cracked when the driver braked, and the phone nudged her palm with a calendar alert. Emma said, "Midterm at 4," and wondered why her heart felt grated. She opened Daniel's thread, scrolled months of emojis, and pressed the screen where his last promise sat. The battery icon blinked red like a wound. Emma whispered to herself, "Hold." The bus lurched, and the day carried her forward. In the library, Emma chose a corner where the clock could not stare back. Notes lined the table, but the words slipped like soap. A draft lifted the page edges, whispering of empty airports. "Well," Emma said, 5 more minutes of focus, and gripped her pen. The phone vibrated with a social tag, and she ignored it like a disciplined wound. She opened the lecture slides and saw the date Daniel set and broke. Ink pooled in the margin where her hand slowed on the word trust. Emma said, "Pass the exam, not the pain," and drew a small square around the leak. A laugh burst from a nearby table and settled into the dust motes. The librarian's steps measured time like a metronome for restraint. Emma closed her eyes and counted to 8. The buzz came again, then silence, the rhythm of almost. Evening dragged its copper edge across the buildings when Emma reached her door. A package waited, damp at the corners, a return address from Daniel's city. Her pulse slipped in her wrist as she carried it inside. Emma said, "Maybe he remembered," and set it on the table like a truce. Scissors traced the tape, and the lid breathed open to a sweater she had once left in his flat. No note, only the familiar detergent and a receipt dated last week. The silence felt curated, tidy as folded sleeves. Emma said, "This is not a goodbye, it is maintenance," yet the word goodbye echoed under the drone of the fridge. She pressed her face to the wool and found a loose thread. The phone stayed mute while the room learned the shape of this return. Emma folded the sweater back into the box and turned the light low. Emma sat cross-legged on the rug, photo albums spread like confession across the floor. She touched a picture of Daniel laughing under autumn trees and whispered, "I believed distance would shrink." The heater hummed a tired lullaby. Her hands shook as she traced the edges, as though the paper could pulse with warmth. Emma said, "He told me I was worth oceans, but oceans only drown the nights." A candle guttered in the draft, leaving her face striped with shadow and flame. She pressed her forehead to the photo, begging memory to answer silence. The clock ticked hard against the walls. Emma's phone buzzed with a calendar reminder for deadlines she ignored. She said, "Love should not feel like exile," and stacked the photos into a fragile tower. The candle died, smoke curling like a last breath. She blew it away, but the ache stayed. In the cafe, steam fogged the glass while Emma stirred coffee. She would not drink. Maya leaned across the table, voice low. Maya said, "He is leaving you breadcrumbs, not love." Emma forced a smile sharp enough to bleed. Her spoon clinked against porcelain, betraying tremor. Outside, rain streaked the street like fractured lines in a diary. Emma said, "I must believe him, or I will vanish." Maya exhaled, weary from repeating truths she knew would bounce off armor. The waitress set down sugar, and Emma counted each grain spilled. She said, "If I stop waiting, I stop being who I promised." The cafe clock struck the hour, louder than comfort. Maya reached for her hand, but Emma tucked it under the table. The air smelled of cinnamon and endings. Emma said, "Don't ask me to leave him yet." At her desk, Emma wrote letters she never mailed. The pen scratched paper with words she could not type. She said, "Daniel, I still dream you are at the door." The lamplight circled her wrist in gold. Each sheet folded and stacked became a wall of unspoken truth. Emma said, "I forgive the silence, but not my weakness." A draft curled the top letter, revealing ink blotched with salt tears. She pressed her palm flat, anchoring grief to wood. Outside, children laughed on the street, sharp against her muted room. Emma whispered, "They live in present, I live in waiting." The clock marked every vow broken. She sealed one envelope and wrote his name, then slipped it back into the drawer with the others. The drawer closed with a hollow thud that sounded like a locked heart. Emma carried her phone everywhere, even to the laundry room where machines roared. She said, "If he calls, I cannot miss it." The dryer spun sweaters like orbiting moons, thumping in rhythm with her chest. The fluorescent bulbs buzzed overhead, impatient. She sat on the bench, phone balanced on her knee, battery drained but waiting. Couple laughed near the folding table, their touch careless and free. Emma's lips pressed thin. She said, "Daniel will come back, and all this will be proof I kept faith." The washing machine beeped, louder than her pulse. She picked up a damp sheet and buried her face in it, hiding sting in her eyes. The phone stayed still, a slab of silence in her palm. She whispered, "Say my name once, and I will forgive." The sheet slipped from her grip, puddling on the floor. At dinner, Emma's Anita asked, "Have you heard from him?" Clatter of dishes froze midair. Emma stabbed at rice and said, "He is busy, but he loves me." Her father's silence was stone across the table. Her younger brother's glance carried pity she despised. The curry steam blurred her vision, and she blinked hard. Her Anita said, "Love should not starve you." Emma gripped the spoon tighter, knuckles pale. The family ate with muted motions, forks scraping plates like quiet accusations. Emma said, "I will prove you wrong." The television murmured news no one heard. She swallowed mouthfuls like nails. Her father finally muttered, "Promises are wind," and left the table. Emma stared at his empty chair until her food cooled into ash. Emma sat by the window, her phone silent for 2 days. The sky was swollen with gray clouds, heavy like her chest. She whispered, "Daniel, even storms answer faster than you." The neighbor's dog barked at nothing, filling the silence he left. She scrolled through old chats, each promise glowing like a ghost. Emma said, "You swore distance was only geography, but geography now measured betrayal." A delivery truck rattled the street, and she looked up too fast. The driver passed by, uncaring, just another reminder of waiting. Emma closed her eyes, replaying his laugh, trying to glue sound to memory. She muttered, "I can still hear it, but not from you." Her reflection in the glass looked thinner, smaller, more uncertain. The rain began again, a rhythm of absence. At campus, Emma checked her phone between classes, screen still bare of his name. A friend laughed nearby, and she flinched at the reminder of connection she lacked. She said, "I used to be part of Joy too." The quad was filled with chatter and umbrellas, yet she felt exiled. Daniel's silence pressed louder than the crowd. She replayed his last message, short and clipped. Emma whispered, "You are pulling away, aren't you?" Her stomach twisted as a group passed, whispering about long-distance breakups. She wanted to scream but instead bit her lip until it stung. The bell rang, her cue to move, but her legs stayed planted in disbelief. The drizzle clung to her jacket like cold hands. That night, Emma called Daniel again, only to reach voicemail. She said, "It's me, I just need to hear your voice," though her own cracked under weight. The beep cut her off like a slammed door. She replayed his voice greeting until it felt mechanical, foreign. She whispered, "You sound further every day." The lamp flickered as if mocking her fragility. She dropped the phone on the pillow, eyes fixed on the ceiling cracks. Emma said, "I cannot be the only one holding the bridge." The room smelt of wilted flowers, a gift long gone stale. Her hands pressed into the fabric as though pressure could anchor her. The phone glowed again, only with a bill alert. She exhaled sharp, like glass shattering in her chest. Emma noticed Daniel's social posts with friends she didn't know. He smiled wide, arm around a woman in one photo. Her chest burned, and she whispered, "Who is she?" She zoomed in, memorizing details she should not need. The caption read vague, nothing about her, nothing about them. Emma said, "You used to write about me," her voice raw as a wound. The room's silence made the laughter on screen unbearable. She closed the app, reopened it, punished herself twice. Her fingers hovered over reply, but shame pulled her back. She muttered, "I cannot compete with presence." A text arrived, only from Maya, urging her to stop hurting. She swiped it away, desperate for Daniel, not truth. Emma skipped class and wandered to the riverbank, the water swollen from rain. She sat on the bench, phone silent, heart louder. She said, "If he cared, I would not feel invisible." The river current carried fallen leaves like messages unsent. She imagined Daniel standing beside her, laughing. Then the vision dissolved. A cyclist passed with music trailing, lyrics about letting go. She whispered, "Don't tell me to let go yet." The sky hung low, gray and heavy, pressing on her shoulders. Emma pressed the phone to her chest, pretending it still held warmth. She muttered, "Distance is not supposed to be emptiness." The water churned darker, and she knew trust was slipping downstream. Emma opened her inbox and froze at the subject line, bearing Daniel's name. Her pulse stuttered as she clicked, eyes devouring the message. He confessed he had met someone else, words plain and cruel. Emma whispered, so the silence was filled by her. The screen blurred under her tears. Every late night replayed with new edges, betrayal sharper than distance. She said, "You promised oceans, but you built walls." The apartment felt smaller, shrinking around her chest. The glow of the monitor cast her in sterile light, exposing pain without mercy. Emma pressed delete, then undo, unable to decide if forgetting was safer than knowing. She muttered, "You chose her laughter over my waiting." Her body folded over the desk as though grief had weight enough to break bone. Maya rushed over when Emma finally told her the truth. The living room was littered with tissues and unopened letters. Maya said, "He ended it long before this message." Emma's chest rattled with uneven breaths. She whispered, "I was building a future out of ashes." Maya placed a hand on her shoulder, grounding her trembling. The lamp cast long shadows, silhouettes of broken trust. Emma said, "How do I stop loving someone who never held me?" Maya's silence was tender but final, a truth too sharp for words. Emma clutched her knees, curling inward, shrinking from reality. She said, "I gave him my years, and he spent them elsewhere." The air grew heavy, holding grief like humidity. Emma scrolled again through Daniel's photos, now tainted with clarity. She whispered, "So she was never just a friend." Every smile, every caption shifted meaning like a cruel trick. Her jaw clenched until it hurt. She said, "You let me be the fool who kept waiting." The room spun with betrayal, memories collapsing like brittle glass. Her phone buzzed with another message from Maya, begging her not to reopen wounds. Emma ignored it, hungry for every jagged detail. She pressed zoom on the rival's face, memorizing her ease, her nearness. She muttered, "I will not be erased so easily." Yet deep down the words felt hollow. The air smelled of dust and stale coffee, stale like her hope. At dinner, Emma finally broke silence with her family. She said, "Daniel has someone else." Her Anita set down her spoon, eyes soft with pity. Her father exhaled, shoulders sinking with unspoken relief. Her brother glanced away, guilt twisting his face. Emma whispered, "I wasted so much for him." Her father said, "You wasted nothing, you learned truth." The curry cooled untouched, conversation frozen. Emma clutched her glass of water as though it might steady her shaking. Her Anita said, "You deserve more than distance." Emma's throat burned as she forced herself to nod. She muttered, "Then why does it still feel like love?" The table sat heavy with silence and steam, an altar of broken trust. That night, Emma walked alone to the riverbank, where distance once felt like hope. The water shimmered under streetlights, indifferent and endless. She said, "I was never his home." The wind tugged her hair, cold against her damp face. She dropped a folded letter into the current, watching it drift until swallowed. Emma whispered, "Let this carry what I cannot keep." Her shoulders shook, not from cold but release. The silence felt different now, no longer waiting, only mourning. She said, "He will not return, and I will not wait." The river answered with steady flow, a truth she could not ignore. Emma dialed Daniel's number with trembling hands, breath jagged as the call connected. His voice, distant and impatient, sliced through the line. Emma said, "Why didn't you tell me about her?" Silence stretched until his sigh burned louder than words. He muttered, "It wasn't serious with you anymore." Her stomach twisted, rage and heartbreak colliding. Emma said, "Not serious after years of waiting." Her voice cracked like glass under weight. Daniel replied, "You made it heavier than it was." Tears streaked her face as she whispered, "I was your future, not your burden." The line buzzed, a cruel hum. His final words, "Move on, Emma," carved deep. She dropped the phone, knees folding beneath her, the echo filling her small apartment. Emma stormed to the mirror, gripping its edges, her reflection fractured in streaks of mascara. She said, "He broke me like I was disposable." Her chest heaved, fury boiling through grief. She slammed her palm against glass, the sound sharp. She shouted, "I will not beg anymore." Her reflection seemed foreign, someone harder, colder. Emma whispered, "He will not get the last of me." The room echoed with her ragged breaths. She pulled her hair back tight, jaw set like stone. She said, "This pain will not be my identity." Her eyes glistened, not with weakness, but resolve. She turned off the lamp, leaving herself in shadow, the mirror catching only her outline. Emma met Maya at the cafe again, her hands clenched around hot porcelain for steadiness. Maya said, "You confronted him, didn't you?" Emma nodded, eyes hollow but fierce. She whispered, "He chose her, not me." Maya's hand tightened over hers. She said, "That was never your failure." The cafe buzz blurred, voices muffled against their corner. Emma's lips trembled before she muttered, "I feel like nothing." Maya squeezed tighter, eyes burning with loyalty. She said, "You are more than his absence." Emma exhaled, the first breath that didn't break. She said, Then I will learn to be without him. Maya nodded, silent support framing Emma's resolve. Emma walked through campus the next day, her phone silent in her pocket. She said, I will not wait for it anymore. Students passed in bursts of laughter, alive in ways she had forgotten. She looked at the banners fluttering above, reminders of promises never kept. Emma whispered, I am free, though freedom feels like ache. She carried her books tightly against her chest, armor in ordinary weight. She stepped past the bench where she once lingered for his calls. The bench was only wood now, stripped of meaning. She said, he cannot haunt places he never stood in. The wind caught her hair, carrying it back, her face lit by muted sunlight. She kept walking. That night, Emma sat on her bed, phone beside her, silent as stone. She whispered, this is the first night I do not wait. Her chest ached, but the ache no longer commanded her. She opened a journal and wrote, I loved, I lost, I live. The words trembled across the page, but steadied with each stroke. Emma said, he will not be my ending. She drew a line under the words, sealing them like a vow. The lamp glowed soft, painting her face with calm shadows. She closed the journal and placed it on the nightstand, her own testimony. She whispered, tomorrow begins without him. For the first time, silence felt like peace. Emma woke to a pale dawn, her pillow dry for the first time in weeks. She whispered, the world still moves without him. Birds called faintly through the open window, their voices fragile but steady. She pulled the curtains wider, letting light scatter across the room. Emma said, this is not healing yet, but it is breathing. She touched the journal on her nightstand, words from last night still sharp in her memory. The city outside stirred, cars humming awake. She stood before the mirror, her reflection softer, less broken. Emma said, you are still here. She tied her hair back with deliberate calm, the knot neat and firm. For the first time, silence felt like space, not punishment. Emma stepped into the park, the grass still wet with dew. Joggers passed with earbuds, dogs tugged leashes, life continuing indifferent to her pain. She whispered, the world owes me nothing, yet it offers this. She sat on a bench, inhaling air crisp with morning. A child's laughter rose from the playground, pure and unburdened. Emma said, I can find pieces of myself here. The sky stretched wide, clouds pale against blue. She closed her eyes, counting breaths instead of unread messages. Her phone rested deep in her pocket, heavy but untouched. She muttered, I will not chase echoes anymore. The sun warmed her cheeks, and she tilted her face upward. Emma met Maya outside the library steps. Maya said, you look lighter. Emma smiled faintly, a fragile curve of lips. She whispered, I am not whole, but I am not drowning. Students rushed past, carrying books, chasing ordinary lives. Maya squeezed her arm and said, that is strength. Emma laughed softly, a sound rusty but real. She said, I thought strength meant holding on, but maybe it means letting go. The words felt heavy yet freeing as they landed. Maya nodded, warmth in her eyes. No lecture, only pride. Emma said, I am beginning again. Together, they walked up the stairs, shoulders brushing. The library doors opened wide, welcoming more than study. Emma sat at her desk again, but this time books replaced letters. She said, knowledge will not leave me unread. She underlined passages, pen steady for once. The desk lamp lit her notes, order where chaos once ruled. She whispered, I will build something that is mine. The silence no longer pressed but opened, making room for focus. Outside, the city hummed, steady and indifferent. Emma said, he was not my whole story. She placed the old envelope drawer aside, a relic, no longer shrine. Her handwriting grew firm, her breath aligned with rhythm of learning. She muttered, this is a future worth waiting for. That evening Emma returned to the riverbank, the same place she once wept. The water flowed steady, reflecting amber streetlights. She whispered, "You carried my pain away, now carry my hope." She dropped a fresh page from her journal into the current, words simple, "I choose me." The page swirled, caught, then drifted beyond sight. Emma said, "I release what I cannot control." The air was crisp, the night alive with quiet promise. She wrapped her coat tighter, not from cold but comfort. Her eyes lifted to the sky, dark but open. She whispered, "Tomorrow, I rise lighter." The river answered with its eternal flow. Emma sat in the cafe by herself, notebook open, steam rising from untouched tea. She whispered, "I am no longer waiting." The chairs around her filled with strangers, but loneliness no longer cut sharp. She scribbled a list of dreams, each line a quiet rebellion. The air smelled of cinnamon and roasted beans, grounding her in the present. She said, "My story will not end with him." Her pen pressed firm, letters dark and steady. For the first time, her reflection in the glass looked like someone beginning, not ending. Emma returned home, her room no longer shrine to loss. She folded the last of Daniel's things into a box, sealing it with firm tape. She whispered, "You no longer live here." The act felt like cutting the final thread. The lamp glowed steady, no flicker, no ghosts. She placed the box in the closet, not altar but storage. Emma said, "I choose myself tonight." Her body straightened, lighter in its frame. The silence was clean, like cleared air after storm. On the street, Emma walked with headphones in, music filling spaces silence once ruled. She said, "I will walk forward." The city buzzed alive, neon lights painting wet asphalt. She blended into the crowd, but felt distinct, present. Each step echoed freedom, not longing. She whispered, "I do not need his return to belong here." She lifted her chin, eyes steady on the horizon of lights. Emma sat by the river one last time. No tears this time, only steady gaze. She whispered, "This is where I let go, and where I rise." The water glistened under moonlight, endless but no longer threatening. She hugged her coat tighter, warmth within. She said, "You are not coming back, and I do not need you to." The night was quiet, not hollow, but whole. In her bedroom, Emma placed her phone face down and turned off the lamp. She whispered, "This silence is mine now." The night wrapped her in stillness, not despair. She closed her eyes, and for once, sleep came without ache. The final thought before drifting, "He moved on but I survived." And that was the last time his name ever lit up her phone.